Alright guys, I thought that since Cartier's Pasha De Cartier Parfum, this one right here, has been such a great release from 2020, one of my favorites, and it was recently featured in my top 20 from 2020 video. If you haven't caught it, please do. So because of this, I thought let's go ahead and do a comparison video of all 4 of the current releases from Cartier in the Pasha De Cartier line of fragrances. So we have the original Eau de Toilette, which is this one right here. An awesome fougere fragrance. Classic, but a great one. We have this one as well. This is the Parfum that came out last year. Then there's 2 additional ones which I bought as testers, so please excuse me, I don't have caps. Edition Noire and an Edition Noire Sport. So 4 fragrances, but when I look up the databases, I see that there are 3 or 4 more flankers obviously that are not available for me, and I'm going to discuss all of these fragrances for you and let you know which one's my favorite. So if you want to find out about the Cartier Pasha De Cartier fragrances line, then please stay tuned. Thanks so much for tuning in. This is Sebastian with Smelling Great Fragrance Reviews. That's right, today I'm talking about the Cartier Pasha De Cartier line of fragrances, which was originally launched in 1992. This is the original one right here. The original Eau de Toilette, really great fougere with a huge patchouli note as a main note in the fragrance. So if you like the idea of fougeres with a very standout patchouli note, this is definitely one for you to try. For me, it kind of reminds me of other similar fragrances in the men's masculine genre of fragrances. And of course, if you like this, if you really like this, this one's definitely one that should satisfy, especially if you like the classic men's fragrances. So anyway, we'll tell you about the 4, plus I have info about 3 other editions in this line that had come out that are no longer available, sadly. But I'll let you know all about these 4 fragrances. But before I do that, if this is your first time tuning into my channel and you still haven't subscribed, please do click the subscribe button below and also click the bell so that you'll be notified for future videos and giveaways. So Pasha De Cartier by Cartier was launched in 1992. This is the very first edition. And of course, it's named after Cartier's watches. Now, I don't spend that much money for watches myself. I have a nice looking Apple Watch, and I'm not your typical watch person, but I didn't realize that this particular line of fragrances was named after watches, so it was good to find out. Luxury watches, and of course they go up in the price range of over $100,000 for the watches. But obvious that a jewelry house would release fragrances, and especially naming them after their particular watches. At least that's what I found out. It was named after a watch. But this actually was such a great release when it had first come out. It was very sexy, patchouli, but a barbershoppy fougere fragrance. Really actually classic for me. It might actually smell a little too mature or tired to younger noses. There's not a lot of sweetness with this one, but a woody aromatic that's awesome. It still smells great today, and it does remind me a little bit of something like Azzaro pour Homme. I think that fragrance is similar in line, especially with the fact that this has some similar notes. This has notes of lavender, mint, oakmoss, coriander, caraway, anise, sandalwood, patchouli, labdanum, rosewood, and mandarin orange. So those are some of the standout notes, but obviously it's more about the lavender and the oakmoss, the mint, and the coriander. And I should also say the caraway, because the well, no, I'm going to say the anise too. Those are the really prominent notes, because there is a slight licoricey touch in here. On me, when I wear it, there is that caraway which acts like cumin, and of course, if you like the idea of cumin or caraway in fragrances, you should definitely catch my video on those 2 notes. And I do like it here a lot. And you know, it appears here as well, even though they don't credit the note in here. So there is a little bit of it here. But this one is the fragrance that really started it off. I think it doesn't smell as strong and concentrated as it once did when I first smelled it back in the early 90s. I never actually wore it. My dad wore it. Well, no, did I wear it? I would have worn it probably from him, because at the time I was going to school, so I wasn't buying a lot of fragrances myself because I was saving money. But You know, it wore great on me, and it lasted for a long time, like a day at least, like without disappearing. Currently, this particular concentration seems a little lighter than what I remember it, but still, I think it's as a great nostalgic fragrance to remind us of the days of when fragrances did smell like this. I think it's a great fragrance, and you know, a lot of testers are available. I actually bought this one from the database, not the database one. I actually bought this one from the discounters, Fragrance X, not Fragrance Net, and I bought actually all three of the different flankers, and this one actually I bought it from a traditional store, but these came from the discounters, and they're pretty inexpensive. This one was around $49, I believe, with a cap, but these two were around $30 each. But let me tell you about those before you rush out and get those. This one I highly recommend, especially if you like classics, and I'm glad I have it in my collection now. I've done a few videos on men's classic fragrances, and now this one is added as well. I do really enjoy it. It does remind me of a Zaro Pour Homme. It has a little bit of different touches, but I think the licoricey touch, anise touch in here is reminding me of that one, which that one has as well. They're both acting very similarly with its formulations, kind of on the light side, but as a great fragrance to remind us of those early days, the early 90s or the late 80s, because this one does remind me of the late 80s or the 80s period. I think this is a great scent. This is my second favorite of the lot, but I'm going to tell you about two that came after this particular first edition. There was actually a version called Edition Prestige Essier, I think that's how you say it, that came out around the same time as the original, and it doesn't seem a lot different than this one. But then in 1999 they launched a fresher mint edition of this, so that version is no longer available. So I'm assuming that particular version, they boosted up the mint in the fragrance and made it a lot mintier. So sadly, I can't test it out now, but that one sounds pretty interesting as long as the mint is, the true authentic mint, because there is a minty touch in here. And I do pick it up. In fact, in the next fragrances that I'm going to talk to you about, there's a minty touch as well, at least one of them. But the current 2020 Parfum version doesn't have mintiness at all. But those two versions came, and obviously I never got to check them out. But I think when I was getting into reviewing fragrances is when the Edition Noire came out. This one right here. This came out in 2013. I'm going to replace the cap from this one and put it on here so that it looks more authentic or real rather than a tester. So this particular fragrance, the Pasha De Cartier Edition Noire, came out in 2013. It's an eau de toilette concentration. It's considered a woody aromatic. With this one we have for notes citruses, cedar, amber, mint, watery notes, black pepper, iris, violet, heliotrope, cloves. So for me, this one, it's called Edition Noire. It's relying on some of the notes of the original here, but it's a very, very modern take on it, and very mass appealing kind of a smell to me. So you do pick up lots of woody touches, you do pick up lots of aromatic touches with this one, and also you pick up a lot of citrus touches, because those are all prominent. There is a little bit of a watery touch running throughout it, and a little bit ozonic and powdery. It's actually, come to think of it, this one's ultra powdery, and you know, it's not my least favorite, but it's also not my favorite. I think it's kind of just a very, very basic fragrance. It's not adventurous to me. It smells like a lot of other fragrances that are marketed these days at the designers, and this is Cartier getting into that whole, like, appealing to, you know, people that like, you know, those fragrances that are all kind of similar smelling, but a little different. You know, they're not overly different. They have similarities to other designer fragrances, but sort of focusing on the name of the original release, Pasha De Cartier, which to me this one doesn't smell anything like the original, but then again, you know, making it very, very modern and similar, and you know, to other fragrances. I don't hate this particular fragrance, but I also don't think it's worth it. But I only paid about $32 for this one, and I guess I can put it to use, but this is not one that I would like reach out for quite a bit. This one I would. I mean, this is very, very classic. I love it. I would reach out for it. And as I said, this one, the 2020 edition in Parfum, is amazing. I love it. One of my favorites from the 2020s, or 2020 I should say. But this one sadly will fit or fall in the back of the cabinet, and once in a while I'll pull it out. Hopefully I can find some caps for it, but in the meantime, this is Edition Noire. This one actually was created by Nathalie Festauer, who I actually have met as a perfumer. I forgot to mention who created the original. It was Jacques Cavalier, who was a very well-known perfumer who's working for LVMH, Louis Vuitton. He's creating fragrances for Louis Vuitton. All the Louis Vuitton fragrances are created by him. So he's a very well-known perfumer. He's been around for quite a bit, obviously, 1992 for this one. So that is Edition Noire from Pasha De Cartier, and again it's an eau de toilette. We only have one parfum, which is not an eau de parfum obviously, but the rest of the collection is eau de toilette. Alright, I'm replacing the cap from the other to this one. So the next edition is Pasha De Cartier Edition Noire Sport. Now this is my absolute least favorite from this collection. It smells very, very generic to me. Ultra generic, and nothing like the original. And I'm going to say also nothing like the current 2020 Parfum version. And you know, I'm not the biggest fan of sport fragrances, but there are the rules to that exception. Like Lalique's Ancre Noir Sport is great. Taos 1920, the original Sport, is great. And there are a few other exceptions to the rule there, but this one actually is so boring. And so it's a woody aquatic for me. It's very aquatic and very marine, and there's a whole salty smell as soon as you spray it. So this particular genre of fragrances is one of my absolute least favorite fragrance genres to begin with, and absolute least favorite genres in men's designer fragrances. I think it's just been overdone. But you know, when it first started out, I think there were some pretty nice fragrances, and I think somehow it's just gotten smelling kind of, not necessarily rancid, but sour. Kind of, there's a sour, salty sea water kind of smell running throughout the fragrance that just doesn't turn my stomach, but doesn't really smell great to me, sadly. But this one's chock full of citruses, watery notes, sea notes, cedar, sandalwood, and amber. It's very woody and aquatic at the same time. Light citruses do come in. In fact, actually what happens with this one, when I'm wearing it, and I had a challenging time testing it out because I just don't like the way the fragrance starts out. It starts off like a sour woods, marine kind of a smell right when you first spray it. So citruses were not so prominent at first, but when the first part of the fragrance is, fading away, citruses were coming in, and the fragrance was starting to smell a little better than when I had that initial blast. But if I have to sit through that initial blast of that sour kind of marine woods kind of smell, I absolutely do not want to wear it. It's just very, very boring to me, and actually kind of turns my stomach. It's not one of my favorite genres, as I said. So sadly, Pasha De Cartier Edition Noire Sport is a disappointment for me. Not worth it as a fragrance. But you guys test it out. You might like it. I don't know. But this is a 2015 launch. So it came out 2 years after the Edition Noire from 2013. And there's no perfumer credited to this one, so I don't know who created this particular fragrance. But let me know if you like these fragrances so far that I've spoken about. Maybe you're a fan of this one, but I don't want to upset you if you are a fan. It's just not my kind of a fragrance. I love the original Eau de Toilette, and I'm absolutely in love with the new 2020. So the new version that came out last year, as I said, is one of my favorite fragrances of 2020, especially when it comes to designer fragrances. I think it's a great release. It relies heavily on the original. These two, the Sport and Edition Noire Sport, I'm sorry, the Edition Noire and the Edition Noire Sport don't rely on these particular, DNA much. They've pulled a couple of notes from this original fragrance, and they just don't smell like anything like these two. But this one just seems like a very, very modern and updated version of this one, whereas this one can seem a little tired to younger noses that are more into what they're used to. But this one is modern. I mean, it smells modern, but it might come off a little mature. But this is a 2020 launch, and the perfumer for this one is now the current in-house perfumer at Cartier, Mathilde Laurent. She's been doing all the fragrances in-house now. I think she's been there for at least a good 5 to 6 years, if not like 7 or 8. But this features notes of sandalwood, liqueur, balsam fir, tonka bean, benzoin, ambersanite, patchouli, labdanum. So in the end, for me, ambersanite is like ambroxan, so they've added that particular note in here. So lots of sandalwood and lots of liqueur, so it is boozy. It comes off boozy, but it's not overly boozy, so it's not a distinct kind of a liqueur note in here. There's booziness, but you're not smelling like cognac. It doesn't remind me of cognac. Doesn't remind me of whiskey, or doesn't remind me of rum. But it has kind of like a best of all three boozy liqueurs in here, because it smells boozy, but it's not an overdose of booziness. For me, the balsam fir stands out. Tonka beans, benzoin, all of these stands out. So it's a bit resinous. There's some sweetness to it. It's a sweet fragrance to me, but it's warm, it's spicy, it's woody, aromatic, and a great modern fougere. And for me, this is more like an oriental fougere because of the oriental notes in here. Things like tonka beans and benzoin and patchouli, maybe labdanum, all those come in. So this turns out to be my favorite, but this one is like really close behind the original Eau de Toilette. And what they've done in like 28 years, they've created something that really pays tribute to the original, but modernizes it here. Like Mathilde Laurent did a Parfum version of Declaration from Cartier, but the original one was done by Jean-Claude Elena back in, I think, 1996. So like 3 or 2 years ago, she came up with the Parfum version, and I think she did a great job with the Parfum for Declaration. But now she's also done a really great job with the Parfum, whereas the original was created by Jacques Cavalier in 1992. Anyway, those are my thoughts on these 4 fragrances. What are your favorite of the 4 that I spoke about today? The Eau de Toilette, the Parfum, or the Edition Noire, or the Edition Noire Sport. There is one more version that's supposed to have been released last year, which was like a modern version of this one, like an updated version of it, which I'm kind of forgetting the name now. Sadly, I didn't take notes of that one. I'll flash a picture, but I never got to sample that. But you know, I wouldn't rush out to get that one because this is not one of my favorite releases, as I said, so it's not calling me. And going back to the original review of this one, this was a blind buy because I bought it right at the height of the pandemic. No stores were open for me to go smell, and it was a great blind buy. This was definitely a winning blind buy, and I've had my fair shares of bad blind buys lately, and also some really bad issues with untrustable retailers that I had to deal with. But you know what, when you're kind of in lockdown mode and you're not really going out and about and experiencing, you know, fragrances, I'm taking a lot more risks these days of buying online. But you know, it's a risk I have to take for my obsession and addiction to perfumes, I guess. But either way, those are my thoughts on Cartier's Pasha De Cartier series of fragrances. Let me know if you are fans of this collection. Have you tried the new one? It's recommended by me. Have you tried the original from 1992? It's also recommended by me. Or the other 2 that are not my favorites, obviously. And also let me know if you've tried the other 3 versions that I spoke about today. Those are the only other 3 I think I've found, and there might be one more, but I'm drawing a blank. But if you are a fan and you have the other versions or any additional versions that I don't know about, please do let me know. Put a comment down so I can find out. Either way, guys, thanks so much for watching today's video. If you have any questions or comments, please do list below. Otherwise, please like this video, please share it, follow me on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, and I'll be back with more videos very soon. Have a good one. Goodbye.